Welcome to another Taram Network video for Our Canvas, a project dedicated to showcasing the brilliant art, music and literature produced by our community. In this two-part episode, we follow the artist Camilla Dilshat as she prepares for an exhibition halfway through her Masters in Fine Art at City and Guilds of London Art School. Through comforts of food and shelter, Camilla Dilshat unravels the visceral discomfort of disconnection to traditional Uyghur culture and a physical homeland. This sometimes extends into works on fullness, of being so stuffed with noodles and warm home food that sculptures burst and overflow, revealing that hollow visceral discomfort of uncomfortable skin and tongues wiggling in silence, something also explored by the shedding snake recurring throughout Camilla Dilshat's work. For this exhibition, Camilla Dilshat is building two gourds that in part encapsulates the nostalgia and familiarity experienced by both her and her mother. We hope you enjoy this record of Camilla's creative process as she steps into unmapped worlds and intuitive remaking as ideas develop beyond their original bounds.
I'm hoping to have this gourd will be a floor piece, a floor sculpture, and then I'm hoping to have one that will hang. I think in the ideal world I would just need two. So making more gourds is very much just like providing myself with options to choose my favorite one, my favorite gourd. Yeah, I've got months till the June exhibition. All of a sudden, like everyone's been like, "Oh yeah, it's happening really soon. we gotta start getting on it." And I'm making site-specific work in theory. Like I'm making work for the space and for the exhibition. I don't know 100% how things are going to look. I just have sketches.
Camilla spoke about how gourds came into her practice.
I definitely just have this vision of like my gourds can be sort of like shelters for like strange creatures that are just kind of like huddled up in there, and they're just kind of sticking their tongue every once in a while to kind of like feel the outside space and kind of get a little touch of like this, and it's like, oh, I remember something. A safe space to kind of experience sort of to kind of like remember nostalgic memories, a safe space to sort of remember feelings of loneliness as well, but you know, in a safe space where you're all like bundled up. But the more I've been looking at it and the more I've been kind of like thinking about, well, if I look at how I draw my gourds, they always have snakes coming out of them. They always have tongues coming out of them. Really, they're vessels, they're shelters. They're like a homely vessel. And then after talking to my mum a couple of times, the notion of home kind of came up and how complex it is. You know, for me, home is not a place, it's a feeling. I don't have a connection to a place. You know, I'm very much torn between sort of, you know, because I was born here, I wasn't born in my parents' hometown, I wasn't born there. But then again, here is not like 100% home because it clashes with my ethnicity and like tradition and culture. You know, the power of eating your mum's food. I never realized it before, but it really reveals, like, it really unearths so much emotion. I never realized it. I like even like eating like home-cooked Uyghur food at someone else's house. It's not quite the same as eating my mum's. It's not quite that powerful. Yeah, and my mum as well, like she it's just little things that she does to like to just remind the little things that she does to the house to remind herself of that feeling of home. She grows grapes at home, so we have a little grapevine because she wants to be reminded by all the grapes that grew in like Turpan, like all the grapevines there, the vineyards. these little comforts that you want to surround yourself with, that I think is just really interesting me right now. It's quite nice to think about, well, what is home for me? If home is not a place, what is it for me? And then that's kind of, I realized that maybe the gourd can be like a starting point to that line of thought. All the things that come out of a gourd, or all the things that inhabit a gourd, is me answering these questions, or asking the questions rather than answering them, because not all questions can be answered.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of the work is figuring out what questions to ask, isn't it?
Never ending. See the sort of just leaves, like really nice textures, close up, instead of just being sort of like a flat colour. It kind of like gets into all the crevices and then makes them all like, you know, apparent. I really think I should have made this bigger. That's what I'm thinking.
How big?
Just bigger than this, maybe just like, you know, this fat. That's kind of what I'm thinking now. I don't think I made it big enough. I'm too timid when it comes to size, I think. Because this one's going to be on the floor, and it's a really big hall, the exhibition space. It is quite scary, because like I don't have a lot of time to like take my time and experiment. Like for example, what color do I paint the gourd? Do I want the gourd to have a texture? Do I want the texture of the gourd to be 3D? I have a lot of ideas of how I can paint the gourd. And do I want it to be sort of a realistic color, or do I want to kind of go a bit crazy like how I do my paintings? But there's just not enough time to really realize that. So I'm kind of just making a decision, just kind of like, yes, I'll layer all paints on it, and then I will like put PVA glue, and then I'll chuck some sand at it, and then I want to make another one that has a hole on the side. Sort of like, you know, when you have the tree and you have a hole in the tree and there's a little like bird coming out of the hole in the tree, sort of like that. So it has more sort of like a home appearance. We'll see if I have time though. Never-ending questions need to be asked. I should probably check if this one's dry as well, actually, because like this one can be painted. Yeah, this one's dry. I'm gonna paint this one darker, the darker color, and just see if I prefer that. I think in a way that's kind of how I have been working, because you just have to wait for each layer to dry, even with the paper, like the newspaper layer. You know, I soak them in PVA glue and then I stick them onto sort of like the chicken wire surface, and I have to wait. And I kind of look at the shape and I'm like, do I like it? Maybe I should do another one that's a bit different. And then each layer I'm kind of like, each color I'm kind of looking at the color and being like, do I like that color? What am I gonna add on top? Am I gonna add like a textured surface? Now with this one I'm thinking I should I'm thinking maybe this one might look nice with like an extremely sand texture, like a sandy texture on top, since I have like a whole bag of sand, like literally in the corner that I bought. And then maybe this one would look really cool, covered in sand. I mean, I did it a little bit with this one. I tried to add a bit of like a texture here and there. Yeah, no, I think maybe sometimes with textures or with colorings, you kind of got to make that decision of whether like having it one texture is more impact. I think that would help. I think my gourds look more refined, because I'm really on the fence about this one. Like this lunch, I was kind of looking at it and I was like, I don't know whether I like it. I don't know whether it's what I'm trying to go for.
I don't know if maybe it's just common for artists to do this, but people I know who've studied art, if they had shit that was waiting to dry, they'd just go off to the pub or something and leave it. Whereas you sit there and think, oh no, I'll take a step back, shape and let the things come out and let things ferment, and it's so deliberate and intuitive in the best way. I don't think, don't be put off by yourself being intuitive, because it just means you're engaged.
Yeah, it's true, definitely. Things are always brewing on my head. That's quite funny though. It's like, finish a painting, I say I'm off to the pub now. Treat myself with a break. Yeah, it's a never-ending process of figuring things out. I think artists, I mean, I was reading this in like an article lately, but artists are most artists are forever kind of seeking out that like eureka moment where things just look right, they make sense. Like, it's like the universe has aligned. Yes, that's the right color. Yes, that's the right configuration. You know, so it's always frustrating when you kind of look at something and you're like, I don't know.
While we waited for the new layers to dry, I asked Camilla about the sketches she'd made while conceptualizing the gourds.
This one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of like look at all these different sort of symbols of like comfort and connection. And again, the idea of I experienced connection through my mum, her stories, her teachings. So I'm just kind of, I just had this idea of just kind of like umbilical cords coming out of gourds, or like food coming out of gourds. You know, this gourd being sort of like the starting point of expressing feelings of home, but not home as a place, but home as a feeling of comfort. That's why I'm just kind of messing around with like gross things coming out of gourds, and then tongues coming out of gourds. But again, looking at my sculptures, I'm just like, does it look too sort of like handmade to the point where it looks really unrefined, or are they also gaining something from that?
At the end of the first week, Camilla also spoke about how her art interacted with being Uyghur.
You know, I feel like it's kind of funny how this kind of my focus on art, the timing of me focusing on my art and me being like, I want to connect more to my identity and my ethnicity. I don't want to feel misunderstood, and I feel like I've been ignoring me being an Uyghur person. Like, I've just been ignoring it, and now I want to kind of understand what that means for me and what home is for me, and feel comfortable in my Uyghurness. And that has come at such like an ironic time. I've never really let myself in an outwards way relate it to my art, and it seems so like I don't want my art to become a source of trauma. I'm very scared of it becoming a source of trauma, because I don't know if that's going to be healthy to me. I haven't even tried to kind of look at my art in relation to like the whole like ethnic genocide that's happening right now, which is something I feel like I probably have to do, since it's like so like, it's like you can't ignore it. You could, like, when people look at my art, they will have that, you know, context. But again, I'm too scared to kind of acknowledge that context in my art, because I'm scared of my art. Instead of becoming a source of like, I just don't want that sort of, becoming a source of trauma. My art, like, it's a very difficult place to navigate. So it's come up a couple of times in my tutorials where people kind of ask, oh, like, what's like the political like interpretation in your work? Are you interrogating like politically or in terms of what's happening to your people? And it's like, I kind of just say, no, there isn't really that in my work. If people make that reading, that's fine. You know, they see a broken tongue and they think oppression. Sure. I mean, my work is meant to have multiple meanings. I want my work to have multiple meanings. But I've for the past, like, I guess like 2 years, I've been too scared to kind of do it directly, because I feel like that's like incredibly heavy.
Yeah, it could snuff out everything, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you have to be in a really sort of like solid headspace. And even I haven't sort of like really spoken about like how this has all affected me. I haven't really made sense of that yet. So it doesn't really make sense to start bringing out in my work. When even my head is all just like muddled. Yeah. It was sort of like a recent revelation like last week where I was like, comfort is actually something that I'm like heavily focusing on, especially like the duality between discomfort and comfort. Feeling uncomfortable, which is very much the diasporic feelings, very much being misunderstood growing up, counteracted with the comfort of feeling at home. For example, when my mom serves me like my favorite like dishes, and I just eat to my heart's content and fill myself up, and then I feel full after that. It's like a complete sort of balance, like complete contrast from each other. And I realized those are the two things I'm like shifting between, especially how much food comes into my work, you know, and especially that indulgence as well. Yeah, I want to sort of like immortalize that into a sculpture, these sort of feelings, because it's like I just feel like these feelings are larger than just feeling full. And I guess it's become a bit of a womb / home for little critters / sort of like a stomach bursting with food because you ate too much. You know, it has a lot more symbolic interpretations of feeling at home, when home is such an abstract, like home in terms of land is such an abstract concept with you, and with more time, home becomes increasingly abstract.
Camilla has made noodles out of liquid latex, which look uncannily edible.
It's great. I love latex. Latex is just so versatile. Yeah, the stretchiness, and they deteriorate over time. Like a lot of people kind of look at latex and think it's like, think of like plastic, because of like balloons is made of latex. But balloons contain like literal plastic along with just like latex rubber, which is the more natural product. This is just like latex rubber. It is processed, so it is more like man-made, but it's really not that durable. Like, it's probably the weight from being hung, like because latex has tension and it stretches, the more it stretches, the more like it's already ripping here. So over time, if it's hanging like that, it would just slowly like wear away. I think latex just naturally deteriorates. It just kind of like breaks apart over time, especially the latex is quite thin. Yeah, that's what I've found, which is pretty interesting. So I quite like that there's this more natural element to my work, that my work in a way my latex pieces kind of deteriorate.
Is it that you don't want it to be visible?
Yeah, I don't want it to be visible. Like I especially don't want the knots that the knots of the knots of the latex when I tie it onto this little like wire thing that I have inside. I don't want it to be visible. And I'm also thinking of hanging some of my salt dough noodle wiggle sculptures from like inside, so it's all coming out. I just want everything to look like it's all like these like juices of this like vegetable, I guess, this gourd, everything pouring out. So if I hang it, it's going to be visible basically that I've just attached it onto some wire, but I want it to be more inside like that, so I gotta find a way to kind of, yeah.
This week, Camilla has also been reconsidering the floor piece.
It might also be a hanging sculpture. It could be like if we have space in an exhibition, we can put it up. I just really don't like the wrinkliness, but maybe it has a charm because it's so wrinkly. but it's too obvious the way that it's been made. And I don't like that. That people will look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's a paper mache object. I kind of want, even though that's how I used, like it'll probably be written in the material description, but I definitely want people to kind of see it as like, oh, that's a gourd first. And then they look at the material description and go like, oh, it's made with paper mache, how fun. Rather than that's the first thing coming to people's minds, because then that would change the whole perception of how they look at the object. But then I have to make a decision of what patterns. Because like, I'm not sure about this pattern. I don't know. Like, it's kind of messy and maybe that's good, but I think it could be more refined. But I basically made this pattern by getting wet terracotta clay and then just imprinting it in lines up the sculpture. And then in areas, like I added a bit of PVA glue and threw sand onto it to kind of like emphasize the clay imprints more. Yeah, I feel like I have the same problem with this. It's a lot neater, but it's also a bit obvious how this is made. If you make something out like in bronze, you know, like a bronze sculpture immediately, or marble sculpture, you know, just because of like art history, it immediately has this kind of like higher, more refined. Especially when you're using materials, you can't ignore sort of the art history of those materials. So the process I'm trying to do is I'm trying to mask the paper mache, use paper mache in different ways, so it's not so obvious that it's paper mache. But I like paper mache as a more rudimentary, simple use of materials. Like I work with salt dough, and a lot of people have been like, oh, I remember making salt dough sculptures with my kids, and I like that. I like that because I did the same when I was little. I made little dough ducks and stuff. When my mum would cook lahman, she would give me like a little bit of dough, and I'll just make things out of it, and we'd make like little ducks together. So I like that connection, and I think paper mache can have a similar connection as well. Like, I don't know whether to just keep it, whether there's a charm in it just being one color and letting the texture of the oil paints that the oil paint has created shine through. There is probably a charm in that. But then again, I'm just a little bit annoyed with some areas where it's just so obvious that I've used paper mache. Like, I feel like this area is really, I did this area like so well, because you can barely see the lines of the newspaper, like the newspaper squares, and in some places like there's even gaps, there's wrinkles, and I'm not sure if I like that. If the only thing that I can do is add more layers of gesso, which would mean painting over this in white again after just putting the colour on. I should be more careful, I think, sometimes. Like, sit down, think, am I happy with the texture of this object? Do I need to add another layer of paint onto it? And sometimes I just get a bit impatient.
But overall, the gourd does seem to be coming together.
Ooh. There you go, you can't see the contraption inside unless, well, I'm hoping to have enough things coming out, so because this will probably be a good height of the sculpture. If I am a person walking up to it, I can sort of inspect all the things coming out of it. This is probably a good height. I'll probably hang it around this height and just have enough things coming out from here, so if people look underneath it, they won't see anything. It will just be all the latex coming out. Maybe I need to do it a different way here. Oh, okay, I have an idea actually. I could just put just splotches of sand on all the lines that I hate, and maybe it will create a really cool texture. I'm gonna squeeze this out. This is my. This is what it's hanging from. It's so rudimentary and just so messy, but it's fine because no one will see it. The gourd should be bigger.
A plan for a third gourd.
Especially if it represents this kind of like ultimate feeling of shelter, comfort and homeliness. You ideally want to make a gourd that you yourself could go inside.
Partly as a potential alternative to the others, but also a chance to work out further shelter ideas.
Because like then I guess us, you know, a human person standing here would associate it more with like a cocoon and comfort. If they themselves go, I mean, no one's going to go inside this gourd, but yeah, that's kind of, it made sense to make it bigger. But also because it's bigger, it's just, yeah, I'm going to need so much newspaper pulp to cover it all, because I want to cover the pulp on the inside as well. So a layer of pulp on the inside, and then a layer of pulp all on the outside as well. The idea is people would be able to look in. It might be propped up like this. I want it to be a bit raised, this side raised from the ground, that side touching the ground like that. And then people could look inside, and I might have some different salt dough sculptures, or like some little critters, some dumplings. Because I think a lot of my like salt dough sculptures, they look like snakes, and then my dumplings look like eggs. So if I put them together, they kind of look, it kind of gives like that symbolism of nurture and nurturing, which I think fits so well again as a theme of the gourd. A little snake den, except they're like not quite snakes and not quite eggs, and they kind of sit in that realm of ambiguity where they could mean different things as well. When I first realised that discomfort had such a core theme in my practice was when I started focusing on snakes and snakes shedding their skin. And I was kind of just so drawn to that, and I created these sort of like snake skin, like I literally made a like clay snake sculpture.
Yeah.
Like an actual one. Put liquid latex on it, let it cure, and then peeled it off like an actual snake was shedding its skin, creating these sort of like pretty realistic, kind of creepy snake skins. I was just really drawn to that symbolism of like, a lot of people kind of see snake skins as quite a negative imagery, like they see a snake skin on the floor and they think, oh, something's here. The snake's been around, we've got to evacuate the space. But for me, I looked at snake skin from the perspective of the snake, and I almost thought of how the snake felt when it was shedding its skin, like it's sort of like, oh, it's shed day. I feel a bit itchy, I feel a bit uncomfortable in my own skin. And then when you finally shed your skin and that discomfort, you feel relief, you feel better afterwards. And I found that quite like a ritual, symbolic way of kind of representing what my art practice felt for me. That I had an insecurity or an irk or just some annoying memory or feeling alone or feeling disconnected, you know, feeling displaced, anything like that. And then my art will provide a way to kind of realize, kind of represent those feelings physically, and then kind of like twist it, change it, find a way to kind of let go of that or come to terms with it. No, this is just yeah, a fired snake, like a ceramic snake that I made.
Camilla has a collection of salt dough, clay and ceramic sculptures of dumplings, snakes and noodles ready for the gourds.
And then there's a little egg dumpling. But I've already started deteriorating these. I need to probably make more. I'll show you the one that's literally just like fallen apart. I can get to it. Here you go. That's, yeah, it's got so many holes in it now. See, that's how quickly like it deteriorates. But I guess it's just because of the tension, because I packed it full of the sand and then...
Is there a way to sort of salvage it in some way, or?
I mean, I could just dip the whole thing in latex again, but like, I think it's not really worth it. It's worth just making a new one. I'm just making sure that the latex is thicker this time. Like do like, I don't know, 6 coats if I only did 4 last time. because this is quite thin latex. I was kind of expecting them not to last. And obviously, like, some of them are more perfect than others as well. I have some none. I've had these for a very long time. They're from a very old installation. They look terrible now that I look at them. But yeah, there's none. Oh, I have
Why
some
do they look terrible? I'm not seeing it.
I don't know, I will probably make them bigger. They need to be bigger.
Is this like wool in this dough bowl?
Yeah, sheep's wool, yeah. I don't know, this creates this nice texture, I think. It's like, but like, it looks like steam or froth.
Yeah.
But it also is quite uncomfortable, because like, imagine like getting one of the hairs in your mouth and you're like, pet. Yeah, so I feel like there's two ways of kind of reading this. Texturally and like, in terms of like what it looks like.
The new idea to stick splotches across the hanging gourd is really effective.
And that covers up the line quite nicely. Yeah, that's good work, actually.
That looks good.
I think this solves my problem, and I can like mask the paper mache-ness, but also have like the textures of the oil paints dripping come through as well at the same time. I can have both of them, yes. I just need to make it all look natural now. That's the... I don't know how to sum this up in one word, but the other theme is experiencing my identity through my mum. My mum's oral stories, storytelling of her sort of memories and her desires of wanting to grow kapaks, gourds in our garden as well, and how that provides a connection to my identity and the importance of that. Yeah, so maybe that thing would be like motherly connection. I'm not sure. You know, I'm looking at gourds because I see a lot of gourds. You know, it's based on my own and my mum's memories. But I think it'd be really, really nice to kind of expand that viewpoint and take more of like a collective history kind of research sort of role. So like all the different ways that gourds can be used, the utility of gourds, or maybe sort of the more decorative history of gourds. So like craft history, or like Uyghur craft history, and like, you know, there's so many different ways that I can incorporate that into my practice. But I definitely want to do that because that's like a step above like the personal. And then the other aspect is like audience interaction and participation. That side scares me. Like, I really like the idea of incorporating a performative aspect into my work, but the idea of me doing performance, who knows? I might do it one day. Maybe workshops can be held in in connection to my work, or just an artwork that people can interact with in a simple level. Like, I can sit on the artwork, or the artwork's like a tent and I can go inside and sit on something in the tent. I think those are the two things that I definitely want to sort of like consider more my next academic year, just to keep myself kind of thinking and growing and trying out new different things.
It's interesting.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I will add more in between to make it look less sparse. But yeah, I think this is like solving my problems of, yeah, I'll keep working at it. I definitely want the vibes to be more like a desert texture.
Mm.
That's my goal. I like how this is turning out because, you know, it's completely unintentional, but I feel like it's going to look like the sand in the desert. which again is another core memory for me and my mum, since my mum grew up in Turpan, the oasis city next to the Taklaman Desert.
Developing the gourds seemed to be a deeply meaningful way to connect with family and history.
Right, it does. The work I'm doing now has meaning for me, and also a lot of people who also have grown up in a diaspora relate. You know, even though they may not relate to the symbolism of a gourd, they will probably relate to similar feelings of comfort. Like, oh yeah, I also seek comfort through my mum's home cooking, or I also have a connection to my heritage through my mum's stories of my family members who I don't get to see often. You know, a lot of people growing up in the diaspora has those sort of collective similar feelings. So they can probably relate and understand and appreciate my work. And, you know, personally for me, it's definitely helped me feel a lot more comfortable in my own skin, you know.
Thank you for coming to the halfway point in our exploration of Camilla Dilshat's work. Part 2 will be coming out very soon. If, in the meantime, you want to explore other artists in our amazing community, check out our canvas on the Tarum Network website. Until then, stay proud of your creativity and make many mistakes.